From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Well, hey, thanks for joining me today. The movie Sound of Freedom currently is one of the top movies in America. It's on its way to doing lots and lots of money, very, very successful through Angel Studios. And the film is about Tim Ballard. And I interviewed Tim for the other podcast that I host, Faith Film Fan Podcast. You can go to Faith Film Fan Podcast and check out all those interviews where I interview filmmakers and we talk about the newest films. So this interview was done before the movie was released. It was done like a couple of weeks before the movie came out. But I'm going to go ahead and put that interview. It's also on the Faith Film Fan podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and put it here on this podcast for those who might not be subscribers to Faith Film Fan. I wanted you to hear this as well. So here's my interview with Tim Ballard, done before the movie came out. The movie was in theaters in July 4th, 2023 is when it hit theaters. I think it did, oh my goodness, it did $14 million or the first day. I mean, it was amazing. On a Tuesday, did $14 million on a Tuesday. Just a crazy story. It was the number one movie. It did more than Indiana Jones. So pretty amazing. It's been an amazing. He was hoping for 2 million tickets, and boy, is he going to get that and more. They are really doing great. So anyway, here, without further ado, here is my interview with Tim Ballard, done 2 weeks before the movie came to theaters. Hey, thanks for joining me today. And you know what we're talking about right now? We're talking about the film Sound of Freedom. It's going to be in theaters July 4th, 2023, July 4th. And the movie is about Tim Ballard. And I've got Tim with me. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'll tell you what, I saw this film and wow.
Oh, you got to see it. Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I'd have to go to the Passion of the Christ to find a movie that was as impactful.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And of course, Jim Caviezel says the same, something similar. And I love Jim. He does an amazing job in the film. When they asked me, you know, that when they came to me and said, we're actually going to make this movie, which I didn't think they were going to actually do because, you know, it takes forever and most films don't make it to the screen. And they said, who would you want to play you? You don't get to choose, but you can request. And, you know, it's funny because it put me in a weird place, right? Because Hollywood is not my friend, right? Hollywood is, in many ways, the reason that I have to do what I do to fight, you know, sex crimes. And, you know, you're fighting a demand that's created from this culture of godlessness. And
let me interrupt real quick here and just let people know what we're talking about. We're talking about the movie Sound of Freedom. Tim spent more than a decade as a special agent for the Department of Homeland Security. And he was assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children, the task force, and he was deployed as an undercover operative for the U.S. Child Sex Tourism Jump Team. So he's had a history of working with this terrible, terrible issue that's happening in our world right now of sex crimes and sex trafficking. And so he's kind of on the ground special agent, and they decided to make a film about it. And so Jim Caviezel, the actor who is Jesus in the Passion of the Christ, who's in Person of Interest, one of my favorites was the Count of Monte Cristo that he was in. That was
probably my favorite. Yeah, he did. Yeah, me too.
So good. That movie was so good. So anyway, that's what we're talking about here. So they made a film about Tim. Sound of Freedom is the name of the film, and so we're talking about that. So get back to how Jim Caviezel was tasked to play you.
Yeah, so they came to me and they said, "Who do you want to play you?" And I said, "Well, there's only one person in the industry that I know loves Jesus, and that person is Jim Caviezel. So that he should play me because I don't trust anybody else." And their initial response was, "No, wait. Like Jim's great, but like we're looking for someone who looks a little bit like you. Like Jim and you are opposite physically in every way." And I said, "That doesn't matter to me." And they said, "Fine." And you saw the film. I think they did a decent job. making him look similar to me, right? I mean,
Right.
So they
know it was great. It was such a good film. And I know they say it's based on a true story. And like with films, with a movie, it's not a document. I'm a documentary filmmaker, so I mean, it's not a documentary. It's a movie. It's a film. So it's based on a true story, but not every little detail is exactly what happened. But we're basing this on your story of what happened. Talk a little bit about the film and basically what it's about.
So it's about an operation that I had gotten involved in Colombia as a U.S. agent. I had been asked to go down and consult on some operations, and I overcommitted. And once I overcommitted, I made some promises. We started getting a game plan together to do a big rescue, and the U.S. government basically said, "What are you doing? You don't have the jurisdiction, the authority. You don't have the funding to fulfill these promises." And they were right. And so I had to make a decision with my wife. Do we walk away, even though by so doing, because we've made ourselves, the bait in this operation, or do we? The only option would be quit. And looking back, it seems crazy. Wow, like you don't quit your job. But something happened to my wife and I in that time, and we knew we had to quit. We had to do this. We had to go and finish the job. And so that's the basis of the story. So we quit, jump in, and
you quit your job. You quit your job.
With the U.S. government.
I want to just be sure people understanding when you said you quit your employment.
Yes,
you gave up your employment to finish this sting operation you were doing that the government wasn't going to support, but you wanted to get it done either way. So you were working with the Colombian government. Is that what you were doing?
That's exactly right. Yeah, working with CTI, which is like the FBI of Colombia, and we quit and we went and did the rescue.
Wow. And I'm just got to tell you, it is so exciting. The film, man. Okay, so I'm a filmmaker. So the filmmaking on this thing is out of this world. It is so good. The directing is amazing. The lighting, oh my goodness. The lighting on this thing. I haven't seen a Christian film that looks this good. You have to go to the Passion of the Christ. I mean, I have to keep going back to Passion to connect this with other movies because there's really nothing like it in the Christian industry at all.
Yeah, Alejandro Monteverde is an absolute genius. And Mel Gibson actually did the final edit of the film as a volunteer. You keep bringing up Passion, so you see his handiwork in there as well. But Alejandro Monteverde is an absolute genius. And he told me, he said, "Tim, how do we tell a story that's about something so horrific?" And he said, here's how I'm going to do it. He says, and he'd be complimented by your words, because he said, "I'm going to do it with using light." And he's like, every scene's going to be a portrait with lights and the shadows and light in the right place, so that somehow that makes it more digestible, that people don't run away and stay in their seats and watch what happens. And I think he was successful in that.
Yeah, no, it was dark. Lighting was so dark in the front. You got these lights streaming. It is a work of art. When you look at the lighting on this, there aren't many films that are lit like this. It's so beautiful how well it's done. Just from a filmmaker, this thing's total full-on art. It's so well done. And then towards the end, when we get some resolution, things start brightening up. We see light now coming through, light coming over the sunrise coming up. I mean, it's just amazing how light is such a part of this film. It's a character.
Can I add one thing? You mentioned the and we won't do spoiler alerts, but you mentioned how the sun breaks over the roof at a pivotal moment. So the cinematographer is atheist, and he said that scene's not CGI. That was organic. And he turned to Alejandro, who loves the Lord and very Christian, and he said, "Alejandro, I might have to believe in God right now, because that shot should not have happened. That would have cost a ton of money to actually create that with CGI, but that just happened. Like everything had to be at the perfect angle and the timing and the sun and he said, I couldn't have done that." I was like, I might believe in God.
It was amazing. Just from a filmmaker standpoint, that movie was top to bottom. The acting, I mean, you've got Mira Sorvino, who is an Academy Award-winning actress in this. Jim is just so good, so good. And so talk to me about what it was like seeing this film. Because, like you say, these things, they hardly ever come about. They take years and years and years. And, what was it like seeing this actually, come together?
I mean, the whole thing really was miraculous to me. I have no experience, obviously, in the film industry at all. So I'm kind of just watching this happen, like I'm outside watching a movie, of a movie being made, right? It's just so bizarre. It's a really strange thing also to see someone play your wife and yourself, and you watch it on the screen. It's like, oh my gosh. And, my wife she didn't watch it for a long, long time after it was made available, because she was it's a little overwhelming these are true stories, that happened to us. And she was sobbing watching it, and because she had forgotten all these things. And I was so worried about her reaction. Like, what's it going to be? Is she going to say anything? And we walked out of the theater. She said nothing. She just was crying. And we went to a restaurant. We sat there, and I said, are you going to say anything? And she said one thing about the film and never, ever has talked about it again, because she doesn't like the limelight. She doesn't like the attention, but she knows that this is going to rescue children. And so she's okay with it. But she grabbed my hands, and it was really sweet. And she just started crying more. And she just said, I am so sorry that you have every scene I just saw is part of your memory in real life. I am so sorry you carry that. And it was sweet. It was so sweet coming from her, because I don't deserve that. I mean, these children, what they've been through is what you focus on. And I feel guilty even considering whatever burden I carry is zero compared to these children. But to have my wife look at me and express that, it meant a lot. And she hasn't said pretty much anything since then about the film, believe it or not.
Well, my wife, as we were watching it, she immediately said, when you have the scene, again, we're not going to do any spoiler alerts here, but you quit your job with the government and you're going to finish this sting you're working in Colombia, and you are in harm's way. Your life could be forfeited. And there are things that you do that are very, very risky. And, I don't know how much, because again, we've got a movie here, but there's enough to know that your life's in danger. And for your wife to agree, I mean, I don't know how easy that conversation was. In the film, it was pretty easy, but, in real life, I don't know, but in the film, it was like, wow. She goes, then you need to go, you need to finish this. You need to go save these kids. You need to do this at the risk of losing your husband, the father of her children. And you don't have like one or two children. You got like 6 kids, So, I mean, it's like, I know the film's about you, but 2, this wouldn't happen. As you know, and I know, this stuff doesn't go down without a wife supporting us.
Right.
And her coming in, that was amazing.
And beyond Catherine just agreeing, I'll tell you what, the part that they didn't show in the film is the cowardice that I experienced in that moment. I was saying, I came to the conclusion, in fact, in real life, I'm not staying here. There's no way I'm going to do this without the badge of the U.S. government, on my belt. There's no way. And it was my wife who.
So she was
I was going to come home. I was going to come home.
She was encouraging you to stay and finish this thing out.
That's right. Even knowing that she likely just signed my death warrant. She knew that.
Amazing. So she I know she doesn't like the limelight, but man, she's the big star here too,
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So talk to me about, for you, what you hope to see the film do. What are your hopes?
Well, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. And there's some great stats at the end, in the slide in the end of the film. And how do people not know that? They just don't, because it's too hard to look at. It's hard to get people's attention about this issue. I hope this film can serve as a great light that shined into the darkness, and that people recognize this is real. Millions of children truly are trapped in this hell that you see depicted, and there really is a way to get them out. But it takes everybody to stand up and do something about it, to get loud, to get light. And so I truly hope that this is a tool that can be utilized to really, really rescue more people and bring them into the light.
So I hope my wife doesn't mind me sharing this, but it'll have a good reason why, so I'm sure she'll be supportive. But when we were about to look at it, she was hesitant. She was hesitant. You know, she's a American Christian housewife, mom, amazing, godly woman, big part of our church. But this was a topic that was something she was concerned about, that she didn't know she wanted to see. I don't know, I want to see this. This could be graphic. This could be scary. I don't want to see kids getting, kidnapped and having these terrible things happen to them. But she did watch it. And when she was done, she was as impacted as I was. And it was, we've got to do something about this. And she was so glad she saw it. So I want you to speak to the main Christian ticket buyer are women. And the biggest demographic is women between the ages of 40 and 60. That's the largest demographic of Christians who buy movie tickets. So that's a big part of who's going to see this movie. I'd like for you to talk to the Christian women in our culture and why they need to see this, even though that they might have some hesitation. Why do they need to go through and see this?
So there's two answers I have. One, which is less of an answer, more of an encouragement, which is Alejandro Montevideo. They made this film with these people in mind, and he made sure, and I made sure. I said, look, you've got to be realistic with what it is. But if you create one piece of material that a pedophile could get off on, I'm not going to let you do this movie. I'm not going to participate. And you'll notice he didn't.
Right.
Like, you don't actually see anything, and yet you know what's happening
right.
in a way that punches you in the stomach. So that's good. And the other reason people need to, Christian moms, if that's who I'm talking to, here's what I'll say. It's designed for you. It's designed just for you so that you can sit and you can stomach it, and you will leave inspired. That's the promise. The other reason you need to is because there's only one time in the scripture where Jesus gets mafioso. Only once. Where his words equal what mafia does. It's Jesus, so it's righteous, and it's not mafia, but he said it. He said it. It's better that a millstone be wrapped around your neck and you tossed into the bottom of the sea than that you should hurt one of these children. And I'll tell you what, that scripture has encouraged me to do half the things you saw me do in the movie when I didn't want to, and I was scared. I thought, well, I know where Jesus stands. I know he'll be with me if I do it, because I know where he stands. And I would say the same thing to any person buying tickets to this film, especially Christian folks. Jesus will back you. He'll give you what you need to stomach it, to learn what you need to, and then join this fight to help liberate his children.
Yes. Now, where it completely differs from Passion of the Christ was it was not graphic at all. And even in one scene, I won't give it away, but it was filmed in such a way that you didn't see the violence. You knew the violence was happening, but it was very ingenious in the way it was filmed so that you didn't have to see it. So again, my wife, she can be very squeamish. She has a real strong sensitivity to violence and things like that. She was able to sit through it and stomach the whole thing, and was so glad she saw it after she would. So I want to encourage as well with you, Tim. I want to encourage Christian women as well as men. Men are going to love it, but for women, it's for you. It's made with you in mind, so that it's not going to offend you. It's not going to be something that you won't be able to see. And when you see it, it will be life-changing, and that is a different kind of movie. Let's talk about that a little bit. We see these films that are out there, and you see them, and they make you laugh, and they're funny, and they're maybe romantic, and you see, that was nice, it was fun, I enjoyed it. But this is kind of different. This has something more to it than just a feel-good movie. Talk to me about the purpose of this movie.
Yeah, I've heard the filmmakers often say, we're not making a movement, we're making a movement. That's what they're believers. They're true believers. The Christian producers, and they only make movies that have that kind of purpose that amplifies light, which is, we're so grateful that we got a partnership with Angel Studios, because the only show my family ever watches is The Chosen. That's the only show. And so I'm so grateful we got a partnership with also people who want to amplify light as a movement more than just a movie. It was a leap of faith for these filmmakers when they came to me with the idea. That was back in 2014, maybe. People didn't even know what human trafficking was then. Very few were talking about it. So they're saying, how are we going to make a movie about something so devastating that doesn't even have context for people to understand what it is? Like, we could lose everything on this thing. Like, and they were inspired. I'm telling you, they through their own prayer and their own revelatory processes they went through, they knew they had to do this. And as the movie production went on, the culture was also preparing. And all of a sudden you see news pieces and people know what it is. And so the timing was perfect. The timing was godly, because this really is a movie that it's not intended to just watch and be entertained. It's intended, like you suggested, it's intended to change your life and bring you in line with the scriptural teaching to liberate the captive and to liberate God's children, to save them.
So I noticed at the end of the movie, in the credits, it said 2020 as the credits were rolling. 2020 is what it said. Was that a COVID thing? Like, has this movie been made for a while and it took a few years to get to finally, okay, now we're going to put it out?
Yeah, so observant that you saw that. I've never even seen that. But yes, this movie was done and ready to come out in 2020. It was a Fox international production. COVID got in the way. Then Disney bought Fox, and we thought Disney was probably going to shelve it. They probably would have. By the grace of God, the producers got it out of Disney's hands. I mean, it was a process. It's been up and down. And is this ever going to land? Is this ever going to land? You know, and a crazy story. It was a miracle how it landed. In my opinion, I was always patient. I thought, like, God's going to do it at the right time. I got an email last summer from the Chosen, and they were filming at this set of Jerusalem in Goshen, Utah, and they invited me to come down. I don't know why. No one told me why. I don't know anyone there. I don't know anything about it other than I watched the show. But I think I give $200 a month. Okay, I'm not one of these big donors because I got to the set and everyone there was like, oh yeah, we give millions of dollars every year. I'm like, why am I here, right? So they gave me the tour, and then the tour guide stopped me and said, hey, the rest of the group's going to go down. They're filming off site. Will you stay here? The person who invited you wants to come say hi. I'm like, who's the person that invited me? Well, he's walking to the door right now. In walks Jonathan Romy. And I'm like, what? And my little kid, my youngest,
he's the actor. He's the actor of Jesus.
He's the actor that plays Jesus in The Chosen. And anyway, my 6-year-old started just getting emotional because he thinks it's Jesus, and he goes and gives him a hug. It was a beautiful moment. But here's the point: is there was only one day during the time they filmed at Goshen that the producers from Angel, they do the distribution, so they're not doing the art, they're not on the ground, but they just Neil Harmon and Jordan Harmon just happened to be there that day on the set. This happened to be there, and we started getting to talking to each other, and I was telling him about who I was, and all of a sudden that's how this conversation began. And then in a matter of months, we have a deal signed with Angel, and here we are. So the fact that it happened that way, and we got the famous TV Jesus and the famous movie Jesus, they met each other as a result of this, all in the same, Angel Studio house. I couldn't be more thrilled. And that, to me, that's a confirmation from heaven that this is the movement.
And they had a very good success with His Only Son. The last thing they put out did very well.
Great movie. I loved that film as well.
And so you mentioned something. I noticed in the credits, the first thank you was to Mel Gibson, and you mentioned. So I want to go back to that because I hadn't heard that. Talk to me a little bit about Mel's involvement in this.
Yeah. So funny enough. So Jim Caviezel and Mel are working up the resurrection. They're probably filming this summer, from what I understand, or at least this fall sometime. And so that kind of got Mel interested in what Jim was working on, and then something happened. This is really unique. In the last February, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Mel Gibson called me, and he said, "Look, I got all these orphans that I take care of in Ukraine. Can you get them out? Because you extract kids. Can you get them out?" And I'm like, "What? I don't know if I can get them out." Anyway, we went for it. We ended up getting thousands of kids out of the war zone, and Mel started making a documentary about it. It's called The Hidden War. It's an amazing documentary that's produced by Tony Robbins as well. But that's how I got to know Mel, and then Mel got even more involved with Sound of Freedom, and they wanted him to look at the final cut. He looked at it, and he did the final notes for the final edit. We call it the Mel Gibson cut. And so, just as a volunteer, expecting nothing, getting nothing other than he just loves the cause. He loved what he saw us do in Ukraine for the kids he cared about. And so there you go. So they added that thank you to Mel Gibson at the end.
So he saw a cut and then gave you some notes on and he would be a great guy to give you notes because he really knows about filmmaking. So
he cut like 15 minutes off and made it better. I remember thinking, how did you do that? Like, you got to have some brilliant mind. I have no idea. You know how this works. That's got to be tough to do. And he did it. He did it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do docs, and that can be, I did I don't know if you know, I did the last movie for the Kendrick brothers called Show Me the Father. Yeah. So that was my movie. So
excellent.
And they were the executive producers on that. So, anyway, so wow, this is just amazing. We're talking about Sound of Freedom. People can get, it's going to be in 3,500 screens on July 4th. So that's a pretty huge rollout. And, so what are your, I think I'd ask this, but like for the movie release, what do you want to see? What do you want to see when the movie comes out?
Well, the goal we have with Angel Studios is 2 million people on July 4th, or the week of July 4th, in those theaters, representing the 2 million children who are currently stuck in the commercial sex trade. If that many people watch this film, and then, how Angel does it like they did with His Only Son at the end, either I'm on there or Caviezel or whoever's they filmed us all. We invite people like, look, what can you do right now? Because as you indicated, your wife felt the same. At the end of the movie, you're saying, what can I do? What can I do? I want to do something. Well, here you go. QR code. Click on here and buy tickets for as many people as you can afford so they can come watch this film. And so we hope that 2 million turns into 4 million, turns into 8 million, turns into, the whole world can watch this movie and then do something about this.
Yeah. Sound of Freedom. Now you quit your job to do this sting operation in Colombia. What happened after that? What'd you do after that?
So after that, we flipped it. We created it into a nonprofit. It's called Operation Underground Railroad, and we have grown quite a bit. We have 140 employees stretched around the world, and we're doing rescue operations similar to what you watch in the film, happening weekly, monthly. I also run another Christian-based organization that Glenn Beck founded in 2014. It's called the Nazarene Fund. That's an organization that seeks to help persecuted Christians around the world who are being also beat up, kidnapped, trafficked. We also help equally any persecuted religious group. And so we run that as well, the Nazarene Fund. So between those two, I'm pretty busy continuing to run these rescue and aftercare operations around the world.
Was Operation Underground Railroad, was that involved in the getting the kids out of the Ukraine?
Yeah, the Nazarene Fund and OUR together worked on that one to get the kids out of Ukraine, and then everything that happened out in the wake. We found a trafficking organization in Ukraine that was a pedophile organization hiding in Mexico. Crazy story. I would take too long but it's going to come out it's called The Hidden War. It will be out early next year.
Oh, fantastic. Can't wait to see that too. Wow. Well, Tim Ballard, this has just been amazing. And again, I don't know when I've seen a movie that was this impactful, so well made, so well acted. Everything about it's great, but when you're done with it, you're not the same human being after you see it. So like they said, we're not making a movie, we're making a movement. There is definitely something there. And I remember Stephen Kendrick, our goal when we want to make something is kind of like our bar is when you see this, did it change your life? That's kind of the question we want, okay, this is good, but did it change your life? That's kind of the bar that they set. And this was definitely in that category. You see it and you're not the same person. You're not the same. And so I hope that our culture can get, and it seems like there's some cultural resistance to this message, which I don't understand that, but it's definitely out there. Have you felt that?
Oh, absolutely. It's been the most unexpected challenge I've ever come across, and some of the things happening in our country right now where children are are actually targeted, and they're being enslaved and abused in the name of liberating them per our own policies. So that's you're seeing this movement. I call it spiritual warfare, where children are the target, and people are so deceived that they're falling for it, and pedophiles are salivating throughout all of it because we're grooming our kids to be something to be preyed upon. So the field of human trafficking goes way beyond just rescue operations. It has to do with everybody standing up and being a light in a dark world that's targeting our kids.
Well, Tim, thank you for going to places that aren't safe. Thank you for going to places that are making a difference, and that and for having conversations that some people don't want to talk about, right. And putting your neck on the chopping block. Right, putting your Operation Underground Railroad on the chopping block. Right, the Davis County Attorney's Office came after you, did a 2.5-year investigation, and the last month, 1 month ago, they completed that investigation. What'd they find out? What'd they say?
There's absolutely nothing there.
Nothing there, but they're coming after you. So I mean, it's just I don't understand that there's this negative pushback on this topic, on sex trafficking. Why would that be? Anyway, those are questions that maybe there's another movie. Right?
There will be another movie and books and everything else to get into that whole story.
To get into that right there. Why is there pushback on sex trafficking of children? Why in the world would you push back on that? But it's interesting. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits, principalities, powers of darkness. And those powers of darkness are there. And this is an important movie. And I'm glad we got you on the show. I'm glad we're talking about this and raising some awareness on this film. And I'm with you, Tim. I hope 2 million people come on the opening weekend. I really do.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me on the show. And thank you for being brave enough to talk about, again, what you just said yourself. Many don't want to. So thank you for standing up and being a light.
All right. Well, I hope this goes well. July 4th. Let's keep going. I know you're going from interview to interview, so I hope your voice holds out for the rest of the day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, Tim. God bless. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye. If there's a show you've missed, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and catch up. Or you can listen to my podcast in iTunes or wherever you hear your podcasts. Just search for The Rick Altizer Show. Altizer is spelled Altizer. I want to thank you for listening. Hey, would you tell a friend about this show and share the love? Be sure to check us out again next week as we discuss how we communicate the gospel through media to our culture. Let's be clear so the world can hear. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.